Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to the OpenNTF webinar series. Today we have Christoph Stoettener. Christoph, I probably mispronounced your name. He's going to speak about Ansible and what that does for us and what HCL products that can be used in. So today, my name is Howard Greenberg, and my co-host is Graham Akers. We also have a number of other OpenNTF board members on the line, such as Roberto Bocadero and Jesse Gallagher. And at the end of the session, we'll have a question and answer period. First of all, in terms of asking questions, we are hopefully recording this, more on that later. That's usually the most asked question. But if you have any questions for Christoph, please put in the questions pane in the GoToWebinar interface. You'll see that in the little image on the screen. So you ask your question there, and at the end of the presentation, we will cover your question with Christoph. We will not be answering questions in the GoToWebinar interface. If you have any other questions related to OpenNTF, please go to our Slack channel, and the URL's in the slide. I'd like to do a quick shout out to HCL and Prominic, who provide a lot of support for OpenNTF. So a big thank you to both of those organizations. And again, OpenNTF is a community organization around the various HCL products. So if you're interested in getting involved in helping out, please get in touch with us on the Slack channel, and we would love to have your assistance. So we had a little bit of technical difficulties in getting ready for this session. For some reason, Christoph's computer wasn't playing properly with GoToWebinar. He spent a lot of time working with their technical support people, and he ended up staying up late last night because our only solution was for him to record a video, which is what we're going to play today. So we're going to start the video and the presentation, and at the end of the video, we will still have Christoph here live for Q&A. So he is here, but I am going to be playing a video he recorded previously last night, actually, late last night. So big thanks to Christoph for the patience and perseverance in trying to get here. So I'm going to start that now, and we'll be back with you at the end. Just to note, the video is about an hour and 15 minutes, so I'll take us right to about 12:15 New York time.
Hello and session Introduction to Ansible for Newbies. My name is Christoph Stoettener, and I'm also known as Stöps. I'm working in Germany for Vegat IT, and my daily work is mostly filled up with HCL Connections stuff, so deployments, updates, migrating from one version to the other, and so on. My first talk about doing Ansible was during Social Connections 12 in Vienna in 2017. There I showed more the ways how to deploy connections with Ansible. Today we want to dive into just the basics. So why do we use it? How do we use it? And so on. I think when we talk about configuration management software like Ansible, we need to think a little bit about servers. And I'm in IT around 20 something years. And when I started in IT, we had no virtualization at all. And nearly each server or application, each service or application needed a hardware server to run. And you all know the advantages of virtualization, like failover, resource management, and so on. But I think the biggest advantage when we started virtualizing servers was the possibility to update from the desktop or from the server room, because before we had to put on the sports sneakers and walk to all servers and update them manually. Handcrafting servers is not hard, but doing comparable deployments, so following a step-by-step introduction is or needs a lot of preparation, like writing documentation, writing step-by-step introductions, because the vendor documentation is often too complicated to just follow it along. I can remember the first tries with the IBM connections documentation when we followed a 1 to 12 step list, and on I think point 11 it was when you install on AIX you have to do 0.5 different, so that was too late. I already did it. So I learned, I go through the documentation before I install something, so this does not happen again, and when it's really complicated I write my own documentation. But writing documentation is most of the time boring, and when you're ready with it, it's already outdated. So nothing I want to do day by day or day for day. In DevOps, we are speaking from immutable and mutable servers. So that's two kinds of ways to install or manage them. So the old way is the mutable server environment. So you just take a server, and when there's a new release for the operating system or for your application, you just install the update and hope it will work. With the immutable environment, you just install side by side, you import the production data, you test until it works, and then you just switch over the DNS name or the load balancer, and then your users are working on the new environment with the new version. And that's really important, because when you do the mutable infrastructure and you do an update on your test server from, let's say, some software 6.0 to fix 1 to fix 2 to fix 3, it often works different than the production server which you have updated from 6.0 directly to iFix 3. So the result is different, the migration can be different, there are other errors, and it's just weird. In the immutable environment, you just install your stuff, you migrate your data, you test everything. Some things can be tested automatically, and then you switch over the load balancer and you're done. So it's way easier. It needs a little bit more resources, but it's less stressful for administrators and consultants. In these environments, we are talking about Snowflake servers. What is a Snowflake server? That are servers which are special. So the one server which hosts the invoice software, which was written for Windows NT, for example, and the original manufacturer is already bankrupt, and you can't and he can't deliver any update. So what can you do? You need to start a project to migrate this environment, but until it's migrated, you have to run it, even when the software has security flaws and so on. And that's often not so easy. I can remember I have network components of a larger device manufacturer who only provides his software for Java 8, and Java 8 needs to be installed separately, and it's better never be touched. So what can we do there? Important after Snowflake servers to think about configuration software are test environments. And when I look at that tweet from, I think 2015, from 2015, from one of the VPs of Circle CI. He said, everybody has a testing environment. Some of us are lucky enough to have a totally separate environment to run production in. And he's right at a lot of customers. So I sleep way better since I can install automatically test environments which are comparable to my production or to production of customer sites. So why are dedicated test environments are so important? Because we already said handcrafted servers are different, and like a good monitoring system as well, a good prepared test environment can give administrators the confidence that a migration will succeed and let them sleep before and sometimes during migrations. So it's really important to give them a way to test migrations, to test the data quality, to test the migration quality, and so on. What are the advantages of test environments which are nearly equal to production? Not only administrators can take advantage of test environments, developers can develop new versions on production comparable machines, and hopefully we will not hear this "it runs on my laptop" anymore when the environment looks like production. So, but some tips for creating a test environment: be as precise as possible. When I think about one of my customers, he did a production environment which was named, let's say, example.com, and the test environment was just a host name with test.example.com. So 2 dots versus 1 dot. I never thought about that. I think we ran that for 5 or 6 years. Until the last update. I tested everything in test, it works, so I deployed in place in production, and one of the components had issues with SSO, so it can't save anything. So what happens? The software was irritated by just the single dot in the production server name. It expects 2 dots, and so a regular expression failed, and we needed an update for the component. So we saved, I would say, 11 bucks for a proper domain name to have a test server like example-test.com. But I invested 5-10 hours providing log files, providing workarounds, and so on. So I would recommend try to be precise even with host names. So how can we solve that? Sure, you can try to install your test environment manually, like with a documentation, with a checklist, but I bet it will not look like production. So I recommend a full automated deployment approach in production and test. I even wouldn't allow manual adjustments in production anymore when you started with that. So when we can clone our production environments and use these for development and testing, we can reduce or better avoid configuration differences in production. So we can troubleshoot in test environments, prepare the update statements for production without disturbing our users. So the complete immutable approach isn't possible, but with the right tool, you get very close. The immutable approach is mostly coming from DevOps in the cloud. So the guys who are using Docker, containers, Kubernetes, or OpenShift, there it's a little bit easier. When we are still working with virtual machines, it's kind of hard to get it completely immutable. But you could start using Vagrant, Terraform, Proxmox, and some more of these tools, and start creating virtual machines with the software. So it's just a click to create a new virtual machine, and then you can start a configuration management tool to deploy packages, prerequisites, and your tools. So let's have a look. Which configuration tools are available? So sure, before we talk about that configuration tools, you could do that with PowerShell or Bash too, but then you have to create all the functions on your own. When you use tools like Puppet, Chef, or Ansible, there are tons of modules which will help you deploy and configure servers and not doing each bit on your own. So I already mentioned some of the tools. So there's Puppet, there's Chef, there's SaltStack, there's Ansible. And why are we talking about Ansible? I think Ansible is the easiest way to get into automatic or configuration management. It's written in Python, so it's easy to extend functionality. The encryption and security is already built in, and for connections between servers, it just uses SSH. So in the Linux world, we already have most of the prerequisites to use Ansible in place. As a configuration language, Ansible is using YAML. We know YAML already from Kubernetes. It's sometimes a little bit hard to get the right indentation, but just try it with a ruler on your monitor or a good editor, and it will work out. So Ansible, how old is it? Who created it? Ansible was created by Ansible Works in 2012, I think. Yeah, the initial release was 2012, and the company was renamed to Ansible Incorporation and was bought by Red Hat in 2015. And since 2015, Red Hat is providing, or Red Hat and the community are working on Ansible and providing updates and new functionality. 3.0 is announced for yesterday or today. I haven't checked now if it's already available, but the last stable release is 2.10.6. So a very important term when we talk about configuration management is idempotency. And it's coming from mathematics, where it's defined as I have to read that, denoting an element of a set which is unchanged in value when multiplied or otherwise operated on by itself. What does it mean in terms of configuration management? Let's have a look at an example for idempotency. So this means when I run a script, it will change something. Let's say it changes the host files, and when you run it again, it will find the change from the run before and knows it has nothing to change again. So we see an unchanged value on the second or third run. When we look at these two code lines, the first one is just echoing a line into etc hosts. And when I run that twice or three times, it will just append a line with the same information again and again and again. That's not idempotent. Idempotent would something like a grep where it tries to find, is this line already in etc hosts? And if not, then echo it into the file. But you see already this really simple task looks complicated in Bash. It's way easier in Ansible. I will show a little bit later. So what is Ansible? Ansible helps us automating tasks during installations and migrations. It uses secure connection over SSH. It is open and you can download a ton of free playbooks, roles, and so on. And it's pretty good documented, and there are books available, YouTube videos, and so on. In the end of the slide deck, I provide some links where you can find more information. Just have a look into it. So, but what is Ansible not? I think Ansible is not a GUI tool, so you should be familiar with the console, and it's not a one-click installer. So when you download something for Ansible, you have to adjust it. You have to adjust variables, you have to adjust inventories and put in your server names. Sometimes you have to tweak a little bit in the code lines just to fit it into your environment. So you should have some knowledge on Linux, you should have some basic knowledge in Ansible, and you need to know the product you want to install. So it's not just downloading something and completely deploy connections. Maybe. I know some people will tell you something else, but I think it's not that easy to get an environment which fits to your infrastructure as good as possible. So what do I need to run Ansible? Ansible is a Python tool. So when you have Python on your machine already, you can just do a pip install Ansible, and you will get the most recent or actual stable version deployed. You can use the package of your distribution like Red Hat, CentOS, and so on, but this will be a little bit older. So you won't get a 2.10 when you install on Red Hat 7.x or even 8.0. For the installation, you need an internet connection. That's not always possible at customer side. So we need to do an SSH jump host. We have to use proxy servers. Sometimes servers can't connect to the internet. So it's sometimes not that easy. And the target servers which we want to use for installing just need SSH and Python. That's all. The rest we can deploy with Ansible on the first run. So when I look at my demo environments on my notebook, I use Vagrant to build the virtual machines. With Vagrant, I add Python and my SSH keys for authentications or authentication. And when you run Vagrant on a Mac or on Linux, you can already provision the servers with Ansible directly with the Vagrant call. On Windows, it's not that easy because you can't deploy Ansible directly on Windows. So you have to create the machines with Vagrant and then switch over to the Windows subsystem for Linux and run Ansible from there. So there's one step more, but I still can run Ansible from my Windows host. As I said, you need the Windows subsystem for Linux. When we already talk about Windows, let's have a short sentence about it. Ansible can't be started natively from Windows, but can be installed in the subsystem for Linux, as I already said. On the other hand, you can configure Windows servers with Ansible too. You just need to use the WinRM protocol or add an SSH server on your Windows servers or Windows hosts. You even can deploy softwares over the tool Chocolatey. So, but now jump into the configuration of Ansible. So first of all, when we start our Ansible configuration, we need an inventory. So for inventory, we have the option of two formats. The format on the left is the INI format. So you have the group the group names in brackets, then the host names, and on the bottom of the left side you see a special group. You can add a third host group and put there the child host names of the other groups. So in that case, I create a host group network And the members of the host group networks are all servers from leaves and all servers from spines. On the right side of the slide, you see the YAML format. All other configuration files for Ansible are in YAML, so I prefer it, but for the inventory, I still like to do the INI format more. So you will see a little bit later, maybe when we define variables, INI needs another syntax, but the YAML format for inventory is getting complicated very, very fast or very soon. So within our inventory file, we can also define variables. That's easy in the INI format. I just mentioned the host group name and add a :vars. Then we can define the variable name equals and the value. We can do the same in the YAML format, just add another option vars and indent the variable name : and the value. That's the only difference. As I said, inventories can get complicated very easy. Let's go with the INI format for now. When we started with variables, you can define variables in a lot of places within Ansible, starting from the command line, within the roles, within special group folders, host groups, tasks, include variable files, and so on. Just have a look into the documentation. You will see the options where you can define that. One thing on variable names, it's not allowed to have a hyphen in the variable name for Ansible variables, but I think that the only character what I would try to avoid here. So LDAP_user is possible, but LDAP-user is a not allowed variable name within Ansible. With Ansible, we are talking about playbooks. Playbooks are a collection of roles and tasks or handlers. We will see a little bit later what these terms will be. For now, in playbooks, we select the host group and define the tasks to run against these hosts. Tasks in Ansible can be nearly everything. So you can install a package to the package manager, you can copy and edit files, you can create files and folders with special access rights, you can manage services like put the SSH service on automatically start when you boot a server. You can run a shell command or CLI shell command. That's pretty much all. With Ansible, you can use sudo, so you can log in as your non-root user to the machine and then use the become parameter and get root and run the install scripts as root. A point on different operating systems, there is an option to run special tasks only against Linux distribution families like Red Hat or Debian, or you can select even the distribution like Ubuntu or something like that. So in that case, I wanted to install the mkpasswd binary, which is in the package who is in all Red Hat distributions, or in the Red Hat operating system family, and in Debian or Ubuntu it is in the package expect. So we can use package for both operating system families, but we need to provide special package names for the distribution or operating system family. So in that case, it will install who is for all Red Hat family distributions like CentOS, Red Hat, Fedora, and it will only for Ubuntu install expect. That's all. When you run that task against, let's say, a Debian system, nothing will happen, because none of the tasks is configured to run on Debian. So I thought a long time about how to start showing the possibilities of Ansible. So I decided to do an example where we will build in, I would say, 12 easy steps, a complete Ansible role from ground up, and learn, let's say, the starting points using tasks, handlers, and playbooks within Ansible. So we will start with SE Linux configuration because we often have to turn it off for HCL or IBM products. So we will disable it. And in later steps, we will configure the limits.conf because we need that for WebSphere, for example. We can reboot when something changed. We create a user. We change the password of the user. We install new packages, which will be the prerequisites for the installation manager, for example, and so on. I put all of these steps as single branches in the GitHub repository Ansible examples. You can find that in my GitHub page. As I mentioned, the branches are named step 1 to 12, and just change the branch name and you see the code version for that step, a special step. But now first of all, let's check now let's go over to the coding. So I show you my console now. Where is it? So here it is, clear. So let's have a look into the inventory. I defined a host group WebSphere servers. I put in one server, the CNX VAS server, and I added the variable Ansible host equals IP address because I haven't generated a name server. So my host will not recognize the name as a server name. So that's the first one. And when we have a look into the playbook, we see here we will run the so we see here we define as first point the hosts. So we want to run that task against the host group WebSphere servers. We don't know here is it a single server or are there multiple ones. I will connect with the user Vagrant in my case, so I need to use become and become user, and then I run a simple task. The name is just something to be easier to troubleshoot later when we ran Ansible. So I always recommend putting a name tag on a task. Then we use the module SE Linux. It's already it's mentioned or documented on the Ansible.com documents. And there are two arguments. It's policy. You can set it to, or it's set it to targeted, and the state will change from enforcing to permissive. The default in CentOS and Red Hat is enforcing. So let's run that. So how can we start? Ansible, we run an Ansible playbook. We run it against an inventory file, and we want to run the playbook itself. When we don't provide the inventory, it will search the inventory in our home directory .ansible. I don't have any inventory there because I always put inventory files into the repository with the Ansible playbooks. So I recommend using inventories for environments somewhere else and not in the home directory. So now start. So we see the play starts against the server group web servers. Now it tries gathering facts. So Ansible tries to connect the WebSphere server, and perfect, it does not work. What's happening here? IPA. It has no IP address. Perfect. I pause here. So now let's start the first time our playbook. So the Ansible is trying here, gathering facts, checks if it can connect to the server. Then it ensures SE Linux is set to permissive, so it was enforcing before. So we see status changed on the server name, and in the end we see a recap. It ran against the server name, 2 tasks were okay, 1 is changed, so we're fine. So let's go to the next step, and first of all reset. So we do a checkout step 2. We are still having an inventory file. Let's prove it's still the same server, and we have a look into the playbook file. Now I want to show a message when the SE Linux state has changed. So we just add a debug module with a message that you need to reboot the machine, and this message is only shown when the SE Linux status, which is a variable we had to register in the task before, is equal to true. So the dot changed is true when the task SE Linux changes something in the SE Linux conf file. So let's try that. Clear the output and run the playbook again. So it's gathering facts. It tries to connect to the server. It ensures that the SE Linux is set to permissive. I resetted the server before I ran that. So it changed again, and because it was changed, we see the message SE Linux has changed. So when we run that again, let's check the item potency of this task. We run it again, nothing has changed. Both tasks, the gathering facts and the SE Linux task, is green, nothing has changed. So the debug task is just skipped. So nothing happens. The machine still needs a reboot, but Ansible does not know because it was the run before. But let's see a little bit later how we can solve that. So switching over to step 3 of this example, the inventory file still has not changed. But when we look into the playbook, I removed the debug task and added a task reboot. So we can even reboot the server when we changed something. Though we reuse our registered variable SE Linux status and created a task reboot. The reboot task will create a message on the console. It has some parameters for timeout and so on. I added a test command where Ansible will try to run the command, and only when it can run the command successful, it will go a step further. So, and the same when clause in the end, like before with debug, SE Linux status changed equals true, and only then the server will restart. When you look at my screen, you see at the middle right the server console. So when everything works out, we can watch the server rebooting. So I run the playbook again. It tries the gathering facts. It changes something in SE Linux, and now it reboots. But the console does not show it. Okay, let's do it again. What has rebooted? So now the right window is mapped to the screen, and I reset the server again and now running the playbook. So it changes SE Linux, and now we see the server rebooting, and in a short amount of time it will be back and Ansible will run one step more. Providing a reboot directly with tasks is not the best solution. I will show something a little bit more elegant in one of the later steps. So I do a reset and get over to step 4. In step 4, we still have the two files. The inventory is similar to the one before, and we have a look into the playbook. So I removed the task reboot and I added a handler. So what we can see here, we don't need a when clause. So when we want to use it in multiple tasks, we can just add a notify reboot because the name of the handler is reboot to our task. Then it notifies the handler, and in the end of the playbook, the handler will restart the server. So it will not restart directly when the task is running or when the task is finished, and it notifies the handler. The handler is running when all tasks are finished. So even when 3 or 4 tasks will change something which needs a reboot, the server will only reboot once. That's quite handy. So let's try that. Maybe it's working directly now. Let's clear the output and run the playbook. It changes, the handler is running, we see the server rebooting, and it looks like before. But it's more elegant, and we will see when there are more tasks, the handler has just advantages against the reboot tasks. So let's go to step number 5 and have a look what we can enhance. So we have a look into inventory. Inventory is still the same. So let's have a look into the playbook. This time the handler in the first task is just the same, but I added a second task. I want to configure the limits.conf file. I want to configure number of open files for the user root. The hyphen will set it for hard and soft. And I also notify our reboot handler like the SC Linux one. So let's have a look when the reboot will happen. Let's check. So the playbook starts running. Both tasks change something, and the handler is just running once in the end of the task section. So, and he's back. But the Ansible playbook need a second to recognize now we're done. 3 tasks, or let's say 2 tasks, and the handler has changes. So changed equals 3. Everything worked out. No errors happen. Maybe a word on errors. When a failure appears in the script, the playbook will just quit. And that's the main reason idempotency is so important. When then you can just fix the error and then rerun your playbook, and everything is behaving like before. So things were changed when they weren't changed in the first run, and all things already done will not run again. So let this one and move over to step check out step 6. Inventory is still the same, and in our playbook, what has changed here, I added a third task which will install the compatibility libraries for the install manager. And because I want to have the system rebooted before this is this runs, I added a point meta flush handlers after the first task. So this will trigger the handler, and it will reboot before it installs the compatibility package. Let's run this to see that. So 2 changes and the handler is running even when a task is following, and when the machine is back, the third task will run and install the package. I give it a second. So now it installs the package. It's one of the prerequisites for the installation manager, and we're done. So let's remove that with the flush and check how it's running then. I let that open and run it over. So we are gathering facts, we are changing SE Linux, we are changing the open files. This time the compatibility package is already installed, but you see it's running before the handler reboots, and now it reboots. So I forgot to reset the install state, but I hope you believe me. The reboot is running in the end of all tasks, or you use the flush handler here and reboot when you're done with the most important tasks. I like to do the flush handler, for example, when I do a kernel update, because then the fresh kernel reboots, and then I run the next tasks after rebooting with the new kernel. So, and that's fast. Let's go to step 7. And the inventory is still the same. The tasks are the same. The reboot handler is in place. And when we have a look into our prerequisites for the installation manager, I added a variable here. So I want to use items. So, and with the with item attribute, I can just do a list of package names which are installed when we run that playbook. So it's you do not have to, or you do not have to create a task per package. You can combine them and run them against the server. And I do not reset the server now, so SE Linux and the limits conf are in place. I just run the updates, and so I hope the server will not reboot in that step. You see the compatibility libraries are still installed, no changes for open files and SE Linux. Okay, libstdc++ is already installed, and the changed ones are packages Ansible installs now. This needs some time, so I think I will pause. No, I don't pause the video. Let's wait for that. I talk a little bit about the stuff here. Let's switch over to the slide deck. Maybe when you want to have a look into the slides, I added each step with a result video here. I did the most recent changes for each step. That's already done. We already did that. We did the flush handler. We added more multiple packages for installation. That's the thing we are running now. That's the video for it. And in the next step, we will extend our inventory to a second host. It's the host group web servers with one server as a member. And as the third group, I added the installation manager group where all servers from web servers and all WebSphere servers are member. So when we add the host group installation manager to our playbook, all tasks will run against all servers in that inventory. Sure, I can use the all variable for hosts, which is always present in your inventory even when you don't define it. But in that case, I want to just show the children feature within the inventory file. So now let's go back to our console. It's still installing, but now it's finished. So you see the combined task session where 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, or 14 packages are installed, are ending up in just one changed clause. So that means the task has changes, but it does not count every single change, just that the task has changed. And when I rerun that, let's check the item potency again. It just stays green. All packages are installed. When a colleague or me forgot about the product and I removed one of the packages, it would reinstall it. But in that case, it just everything stays the same. And so we have 4 OK tasks without any changes. Clear. And let's go over to step 8, where I already talked about the inventory. So we have two host groups and a child host group. And when I check the playbook, we still want to install the WebSphere servers with disabled SELinux, with open files configured. But I removed the install packages. I let the handler in there, but I moved the install of the prerequisites of installation manager to a separate host group installation manager. Why did I do that? WebSphere and web server need the installation manager as a prerequisite. So move this together and install everything, and that's all. And when I run that without changing the server, it just hop over the first tasks. And now it gathering facts. So we find 2 servers now, the WebSphere servers and the web server. We see the WebSphere packages, the green ones are already installed, and here is the first thing for the web server, and it starts installing the packages on the web server. What does that mean? Ansible always runs tasks in parallel for all host group members. So it will run the update packages or install packages on both servers on the same time. There's a configuration option, how many servers at a time it will use. I think it's 4. You can extend that when you have a fast network and a fast environment. But you can also limit this, because I ran into an issue when I registered the first time multiple web servers into a WebSphere deployment manager, because when you run that during the same time, the one task will override the other. So there you need a config option that this task is run only on one server at a time. But can't remember the option. I need to deliver that on a later or tomorrow. So it still installs. It still installs on the web server. Let's wait until it's finished. It will not reset here. Just a short wait time, I hope. But I can pause here. So now the task has finished. We have a short recap. We see the WebSphere server has no changes. We already applied that playbook to it, but the web server has one change, because we don't do the SELinux task against the web server. We install the packages, so both servers have the same software status in the moment. So that's all for step 8, and let's check out the step 9 inventory. So nothing changed in inventory, and what we are seeing here, I added an option to create a user group on the server. So we want to create a WebSphere user, a WebSphere user group. And in the next task, we want to add a user for our non-root deployment. So the username is var_sys. We can add a comment. We can give him a UID. We can provide the login shell, his group, and that it's present. So I can use the same module to delete or remove a user. And in the end, I need a password. The password needs to be a password hash in a special format. Let's switch over to the slide deck. I have it there, I think. Is it this one? Yes. So you see it's a Python command here. It's import crypt and then print the hashed or crypted password. And I did this on the console and just copy and pasted it into my YAML file. Not elegant, but we will see another solution in a short time. So let's run this. And I haven't reset the server for that, just to avoid the reboots, but it will run the additional task and create the user group and the user. Now it checks if all applications are deployed. So, and we're done. There is a new user on both servers and the new user group, and it's finished. So that's fine. So, and to move on a little bit faster, I go straight to step 10. What has changed? I added more stuff. So first of all, I replaced the username with a variable. The syntax within the playbook file is curly brackets twice around the variable name. The definition of the variable name we will see in the inventory file. And I added a shell command. So we run the Python command we saw on the slide before, and we register the output of that Python command into an extra variable in the was user password hash. And this password hash can be reused in our create user statement. Just call the variable name with stdout. So the standard output contains our password hash. And when the user is created, it uses the password hash directly. I did a additional parameter update password on create because the crypt command is salted. So the salted password hash changes every time I run that command, which means the password hash is different on each Ansible playbook run, and it will override the password each time and will show us a change parameter. So we don't want to do that. There are two options. We can provide crypt with the salt. That's nothing I want to do. I want to calculate the salt hash here. So I added a changed when to our password hash generation because it's irrelevant for our playbook and item potency if the password hash is different, because the password is read from our variable file, so we know it's the same password and it's not overwritten in our etc passwd file. So, but let's have a look into the variable definition. The variables are defined in the inventory file. I just added two variables, one for the username and one for the password. So we have the clear text password here. There's something better in the next steps, but now we are living with the clear text password. So, and when we run that, it will not change anything because I haven't reset the server. I don't want to do that now. Let's see. I need to shorten that list. So now it generates, needs a second. Now we see the user group is already present. The hash user password is generated here. Let's do a little hack. I delete the additional packages here. So when I run Ansible Playbook -v, I get a more verbose output. So let's check if we can see the hash. And we see here, that's the output of the console. We see the std outlines, we see the password hash. So when you want to troubleshoot your Ansible playbook, you can just add 1, 2, or 3 V's in the end, and you get a more verbose output and can check if everything that you build is really running as you thought. So that's this one. And git reset hard to get that back. Git and move over to step 11. Inventory. The inventory file is still the same. The playbook looks different because it's way shorter. So we still see our host group, we see our installation manager group, but now we have not a task or a handler. We have a role statement with a role name. So I created a role Ansible demo and a Ansible demo 2. And we see a new folder roles. And when we enter folder roles, 3, we see the 2 roles here. Beneath roles, there is a defaults folder, a handler folder for the demo 1 that will keep our reboot, I think, then the task file, and in each folder a file main YAML. Let's go with the main file for the moment, and the same for the second role here. So let's have a look into Ansible demo defaults main. In defaults main, we define our variables like before. I changed it slightly because we define that variable name in our inventory, like this and that. We use, or I use often 2 underscores variable name for my roles, and I add a default value in the end of each variable. So when somebody is reusing my role and forgot to define the variable, it has a working default, and the role will just run and not stop with an error because the variable is not defined. So we see 2 new variable names here, and when we check the handlers here, I'm not sure, is there? No, it's just empty. And the tasks folder holds our tasks from before. So you see it's just a copy from the playbook. So we just move the parts from the playbook over to the role, reuse it here, and I did a mistake here. I forgot to update the variable files. I normally would reuse, or not reuse, the direct variable names from our inventory. I would replace with the one from the default file. So it's webs user password, and here it's WebSphere user. So now, okay, the was user password hash is just registered, so we can reuse it here, and we are fine. And when we check the second role, there's an additional handler directory with the main YAML, and here we find our handler from before from the playbook. And when we check the tasks here, tasks, we still use the notify reboot. So it will notify the handler. You see the roles are defined like our playbook before, only the options, tasks, handlers, and so on are moved to subfolders of the role name. So, and now let's run this script and see what happens. Normally nothing should change because the server has the same state as we ran before. I added the -v again. It just checks, okay, all server packages or all software packages are installed. And when it's done checking the packages, the output is slightly the same as we saw before with our playbook. We now get an additional role name before our name or of the task. We see here the Ansible demo 2 role and here the Ansible demo without number role name, and everything ran like before, but it's way better maintainable. It's easier to read. So I recommend splitting up your playbook into single roles. That's all. And now as a final step, git reset. We will see step 12, git check step 12. In step 12, I just wanna run the playbook. So now I get an error attempting to decrypt, but no vault secrets found. What have I done? If I look into my folder structure, or let's use tree here, I added a folder group variables with the file all and the file installation manager. So from the precedence of variables, this will be the variable definition for all hosts defined in the inventory. That one counts only for the host group installation manager. So when we look into the inventory, there is no variable definition left. And when I check the group was installation manager, we see our was user user definition. And now let's check the all one. Oh, that's strange. Here I implemented the Ansible Vault. Ansible Vault is one option to just encrypt a file. So decrypt group was all. Give it a password. So in that file is just a definition of the was user password with the value. I encrypt it again just to show how to use it with the playbook. And it's encrypted again. So now let's run our playbook again. Where is it? Here. And I add a parameter ask vault pass. So now Ansible asks me for the password of our vault file, and the playbook will run as before, but nobody can read our password. So it's much more secure. It's a little bit different to work with, but I even can check in that encrypted files into my Git repository and can be sure that nobody knows my password. So that's pretty much all now for the demo part. You can review everything on the slide deck. It's a little bit shorter in the slide deck, but I hope that was understandable. So let's move back to the slides. Where is it? So we are finished with our example. So how can we run our playbook? I already showed to how you can run it on the CLI. So just use the command Ansible playbook, add an inventory, add maybe a password. You can define variables and start your playbook. You could invest into Ansible Tower. It's a product of Red Hat. I think it's expensive. It's a web GUI, but that's pretty much all I can say about Ansible Tower. There is a free version of Ansible Tower. It's AWS. I forgot to add the link. Sorry for that. I will bring that in a little bit later. So there you have a web GUI. You can define you can define access rights for your AWS. So you can say, okay, user with login Stoettener is allowed to deploy on server 123, and you don't have to provide me the vault password or a key file to access the server. That's all handled by AWS. Or you add Ansible to Jenkins. I have customers which are using Jenkins to deploy Ansible roles. That's quite handy too. So no developer or no DevOps engineer needs to have direct access to the server to run Ansible. They just put the roles on Jenkins, and Jenkins has access to all servers and run the tasks there. And I already mentioned you can directly provision when you use Vagrant and Terraform. So where can I find roles? Simple said, you can write them, you can download some, you can check galaxyansible.com. There is a large collection of hundreds of well-written roles which can be imported into your playbooks. I think this modular approach is one of the best I saw when I need to deploy with Ansible in multiple environments. So in my case, I started with Ansible for Connections years ago, and I did it in one big Git repository, and so I moved the Git repository to customer one, made changes, moved it back. On some customer sites I have no access to Git, so it's hard to update the scripts. Sometimes you need to reuse parts, and other parts you need to use the old ones. It's just hard to get to stay up to date with all that roles. Or you can, as I said, I wrote complete repositories. You can download complete repositories like the one at Connections Automation. It looks quite cool. I haven't used it completely. I used parts of it in the moment. We will see. I already talked with the maintainers. I hope we can do it a little bit more modular to reuse or use them in as many environments as possible, but the future will tell us. Yeah, we talked about security already. When you want to know more about Ansible now, there are links for the documentation, there are blog links, there is a quite good book from Jeff Gilling about Ansible for DevOps. It's on, it's a publishing site. I forgot to provide the link. So it's not expensive, 30 or 40 bucks. I can recommend that. Jeff did a really good series on Ansible on YouTube. You can just rewatch or watch them. There is a good article about deploying containers with Ansible at Red Hat. It's the link at the bottom. Just have a look at that. Oh. So what can you do when you're a administrator or a developer? And I can just recommend have a look at Ansible. It saves you a ton of time. Sure, you will need time to create that scripts and test this and everything. There are options to automatically test Ansible roles. There is something like Molecule, quite cool. So it runs your role automatically against some Docker containers. That's really good. Ansible itself is easy to deploy. You can deploy different environments for developers, Q&A, test, production, and so you can keep it simple, so stupid simple. I just can recommend that. And in the end, when you're a Connections customer, have a look into the repository from HCL. There are tons of possible scripts and options how you can work around the shell and install WebSphere and all additional tools. You can try it for demo, you can try it for production. Just have a look into it. I think you have the basics now to understand variables and the basic tasks to start with. Shout out to Dejan and Steven here. They did an awesome job providing that collection, and so the only thing I can do now is saying thank you for listening and goodbye. See you next time. Bye.
Well, thanks, Christoph, for virtually providing that presentation. We do have Christoph here in person to answer questions. So if anyone has any questions, please add them now. Before we get into the Q&A, we do have our next webinar planned. We are going to be doing a topic Nomad Mobile and kind of diving into some tips and tricks for developers who want to optimize their apps for Nomad Mobile. First, we're going to start off with two speakers from HCL, including everyone. I think almost everyone knows Thomas Hampel, but Max Sutton is one of the lead developers on Nomad Mobile, and he's been doing that for a while. And then, of course, we have Theo. Everyone knows Theo. He's going to be talking about his work in optimizing an application for Nomad. Some of you may have seen that before, but he's going to take a little deeper dive. And Tom Van Aken is going to also talk about optimizing an app for Nomad Mobile, but in this case, optimizing it for Android devices. So some of the techniques he does there are pretty sharp. So that's on March 18th. Go to openntf.org/webinars to sign up information. Okay, I think we're ready for Q&A. Looks like we only have a couple questions lined up. So if you have any questions for Christoph, please get them in there. So Graham, do you want to start with the first question?
Sure. And it's a good question. It's kind of about the future of server deployments and some of the announcements from HCL around solutions factories. So it's more of a kind of a compare and contrast question. Christoph, anything from a solutions factory standpoint that perhaps makes using Ansible a different option, I guess, is the best way to put it. Christoph.
Sorry, I couldn't understand anything of the question, Graham. Can you repeat that, please?
Okay,
I'll jump in. Graham, for some reason, your voice is kind of garbled.
Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know what's wrong. But so, yeah, we had a question from Tinas. He said, since HCL wants to put all their products in a solution factory, which uses Helm, I am guessing that Connections Ansible is just a stopgap measure. Do you have any insight into that, Christoph?
Yeah, with Helm, you can just deploy against OpenShift or Kubernetes as long we have tools which are not containerized. We need to use something else. So like Ansible.
Okay, so yeah, that's the difference is that Ansible doesn't have to be containerized and Helm is containerized.
Yeah, exactly. So with Helm, you deploy against the Kubernetes server and deploy your pods and your containerized application. With Ansible, you can do that too, but on the other side, you can install everything what you want to do.
Okay, thanks. And then we had another question. Since you had to adjust things like the domain name, etc., when I run the Ansible script, how do I know what I need to adjust? Do I have to rely on documentation within the script?
Yeah, that's the most complicated one when you just download scripts or a large collection of roles. Normally, each role has a README file where you can put in all needed variables and so on. And when they are completely tested, normally the adjustments are just in the variable files. So you don't need to adjust anything in the role or the script itself. But sometimes I had a review on the LDAP search filter, for example, in TDI. There was no variable for the search filter. So in that case, when your LDAP needs a special search filter for your connections users, you have to adjust the script files in the moment. But I'm pretty sure I will do a PR on that because I saw it during lunch.
Okay, and that's it for the questions we got so far. So I'd like to thank you, Christoph, for putting together that video to um, get over the hurdle that we had, the technical hurdle of your GoToWebinar not interfacing right nicely with your computer. So thank you so much. I know you really had to hustle to pull that together at the last minute.
Thank you for having me. So
Yeah, I appreciate that. And so we will post the recorded session as well as the slides up to the OpenNTF website. That's where the links will be. Again, that's opentntf.org/webinars. So that should be up there in a couple of days. And I'd like to thank everyone for attending. Graham, I don't know if you got your microphone or audio issues back, but thank you for being a co-host along with Roberto and Jesse.
Oh,
So,
yeah, thanks.
yeah, it sounds like you still have some issues there somewhere in the internet world. So, everyone have a nice rest of your day and take care. We'll see you on the next webinar.
take care. Bye bye.